respect the past, but believe that you can be better.
We spoke to Filmfare award-winning director Rajiv Menon about how he first came across Indian Raga and why he liked it. Rajiv talked to us about his upcoming Carnatic music-based movie Sarvam Thala Mayam, his views on Carnatic music, and his advice for fans of Indian Raga.
People who know the beauty of Carnatic music would like that beauty to reach as many people as you can. But the thing is, being a classical form, the more you know, the more you can appreciate it. So it's very difficult for a lay audience to come in and get enthralled by Carnatic music. And that's where Indian Raga and so many of you guys are doing such a brilliant job, because I was one day just looking at YouTube and I see this. Somebody had sent me a link saying that there is an Indian a cappella of Nalina Kanti of Kandukondain song. And I was quite blown by the effort that had gone in, and also the melody was beautiful and it had got a new interpretation. Kim, as a kid you heard that. That is what you're trying to bring in Kandukondain, the song, and that is what you guys are actually taking it to a larger thing with a new form. So I think there is a great wealth which has been created by the Trinity and the pre-Trinity and the post-Trinity or whatever it is. And that compositional thing may have come to you in the Kacheri Sampradaya, which is probably 100 years old, but may now need to live in people's memory through the YouTube channels or through any other form,
That's a great thing to think about, and we encourage the same when youngsters who are training in these art forms try and find their passion for this art form, which can happen at any age, and it doesn't always happen when you're very young. And what I'm really inspired by is how the protagonist Peter in the film is developing a passion for rhythm. Now, he's always been passionate about it, but what is that moment when he realizes that he really wants to pursue it? And to your point, I'd love to kind of bring that together with why we need to sort of allow for experimentation in different ways for what some of the older composers might have composed.
Yeah, my father was a naval officer, and we lived in many naval bases all over in India, and we didn't have exposure. We heard Carnatic music as my mother practiced. But living in Vizag or in Delhi or something, it was not that you could go and hear kacheris. But because of our practice, these songs were there in our head. And then when we came to Madras, we had a chance to actually go to kacheris. And suddenly, I was hearing M.D. Ramanathan, and I was like in awe of that. And it was a kind of a moment, where I would try to sing like MDR, and I went and took his autograph, So these great personalities, who were so different from each other, Semmangudi, MDR, started fascinating me when I was probably in my 9th standard. But I had not listened to any concerts before that, but I'd heard the songs. But when you hear these masters interpret it, there's a moment of epiphany. Wow, I mean, look at the way they are singing, it's so different. So I wanted that moment in Peter, that Peter who knew rhythm, who was playing for films, first day release and all this kind of stuff. The same instrument that he makes, but when he hears a genius, a great maestro play, then he's in awe. And that is the acceptance, the guru that appeared in your life, the kind of master that you've been searching for. So that is a kind of a, can I say, like a Joseph Campbell moment where you are actually looking at you need that mentor, you need that guru to look up to. And whatever, culture you go to, the wise old man who comes into your life and then, you kind of learn from him. I think that is the construct that I was trying to do.
நீ ஜான்சன் பையன் ரோட்ல என்ன வேணாலும் பண்ணலாம் ஆனா இது ஒரு கோவில்.
So his meeting the guru had to blow his mind, and he had to sort of feel that he was this man I had to learn from.
Right. And at the same time, it also has to come together with the guru wanting or being okay with teaching the disciple. And that also, again, in our conversation before, you mentioned about why, at what point does the guru agree to take him on as a student, or first gets piqued, his curiosity gets piqued. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that statement in the movie where he says that it feels like he loves to hear himself play, and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, because we've had films earlier which try to dwell on the Ekalavya theme of a underprivileged person trying to learn from a guru. In that sense, the cruelty of the guru of not wanting to give, and yet the devotion of the student. But I wanted to subvert that. I wanted to come to the contemporary reality that a guru needs a great student also. So, when a guru hears raw talent being performed, you just look at it and say that, God, this guy is really enjoying himself. Not that he's understood what it is to, compose a kriti, or not it is, his pattern is not sort of intelligent enough to fit into the concert platform or anything, but it is just raw talent that impresses the guru. And that the fact is, ultimately, rhythm is not something technical. It's very organic, and it's an agony to see some people play, and it's a joy to see some people play. That joy makes you, come back to the essential quality of rhythm, which is making you joy. So many young people, when they hear a slightly different form of instrumentalization or slightly different way of taking this music and making it more modern, then they get into it much more easier.
So staying on the topic, the idea of making something modern, historically we've also seen that any body of work or any art form constantly takes inspiration from other genres or from the context that it is set in and so on. So I'm just curious to hear about your take on, and there's many parents at IndianRaga, students and performers and all of them, who are curious to hear about, my child is now influenced by other cultures. Yeah. Is that okay? And at what point do I need to be worried? How do we channelize that energy? He doesn't want to sing a regular kriti, but for now he wants to do like a film song. And is that okay? So I'm curious to hear through the lens of Peter and just all of your movies which have had characters with all these different influences, your take on that aspect.
Yeah, I think it's very important that we understand, seminal influences in Carnatic music, and probably the greatest musicologist who was a composer was probably Dikshitar. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at Dikshitar, he was, hanging around Fort St. George listening to these kind of band notes, and he was just figuring out what these Western bands are and then writing compositions. Absolutely. He was curious enough to know that. And he was curious enough to go to North India and go and, listen to and study Dhrupad and Hindustani music, and then come and pull off something like Rangapura Vihara, which is so brilliant, and it was taking on something which is definitely, you're calling it Vrindavana Saranga. And he was also interested in etiology and trying to name certain ragas in a certain form, and somebody else would name it or something else. But having said that, here was a man who was continuously listening and bringing in different cultures into Carnatic music, And Carnatic music, as we know, was a product of a very synchronistic culture that evolved in Tanjavur, where you had the Marathas, the singers. All kind of influences were coming in, and at that time, the Dutch were already ruling in Cochin, and the British were vying for power, and by 1720, Battle of Srirangapatna, then it's when they start making the influence. So many things happen around that time where Western instruments are coming in, and it is very clear when you hear certain compositions that you can find distinct influences of Western classical music into traditional composition styles. And when you're going to hear Sikil Gurucharan sing Bhogindra Shayanam, you do feel a lot of the kind of Western kind of chord progression, kind of techniques used in that song. So I think when the masters have got a lot of different influences and they come to the form, young people in America are bound to listen to blues and jazz and hip hop and rap and everything. But I'm sure the ragas will sneak and simmer and emerge inside their hearts as they start enjoying it.
That's absolutely fascinating and inspiring. Thank you so much, Rajiv, for bringing this movie to us. And I'd encourage all of you watching to check out Sarvam Thala Mayam, which will be playing at a theatre near you globally, releasing on February 1st. It's a great conversation to have in your own community or in your own network about the role of the classical arts today, how we can make them more accessible to not only underrepresented communities, but also to a more global audience that our classical arts so are in need of today. And with that, please go watch the movie, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it.